Welcome into the Ben Bosscher Show.
Yeah.
Let's get rocking and rolling here on a Monday. How about that? This is going to be a little bit more fun than last week, I'll tell you that for sure. Because, I don't know, last week, Monday was pretty depressing. Red flags, panic meter going through the roof. All of that put to bed by the Detroit Lions yesterday against the Chicago Bears. They bring out the hammer and just kick Ben Johnson in the butt with it. Lions 52, Bears 21. And the Lions back in the victory column for the first time this season. All the narratives about this Lions team, myself included, that started. I guess I didn't start it, but, you see what happens when they play out in front of you and the interior of the offensive line is just so miserably bad. All these narratives start to begin, or at least continue from last week of like, what is going to happen? What does the interior of the offensive line look like? If I would have just showed you last week, you wouldn't have even known that this team had any struggles. And let's not pretend like this was a perfect game. There were still some defensive mishaps on that side of the ball. But, hey, 52 points up on the scoreboard. It was one of those games where everybody eats. J-Mo getting involved, 108 yards on 2 receptions for crying out loud. Sam Laporta gets involved early, but he has one of the quieter days. Hell, even Brock Wright catches his 10th career touchdown, the most by an undrafted player in franchise history. We've got Gibbs and Montgomery, Sonic and Knuckles finding the end zone. And then, of course, the man, the myth, the legend that is Amon-Ra St. Brown finds himself in the end zone 3 different times for the first time in his career in a single game. It was a huge sigh of relief. And I don't know at what point throughout the game I officially said, this game's over. Probably sometime in the third quarter. But it was just such a huge sigh of relief and weight off of the shoulders of any Lions fan out there because you finally got to rest. And for a week, we worried about this Lions team. And I think there was real reason to worry. But all that worry can be thrown out the window. We can start talking about this team as a Super Bowl contender once again. I'll say this, I am a fan of the close games, the ones that make your heart race a little bit. The Lions haven't played either of those, or haven't played a game like that in 2 straight weeks. A blowout's fun. I kind of like the adrenaline rush in the fourth quarter when you actually do have a game on the line. But hey, man, when you lose week 1, you need to pick up a win like this. They absolutely decimate Ben Johnson, embarrass him and his entire team. Caleb Williams looks like a bottom 7, bottom 8 quarterback in the NFL. And suddenly we're sitting here with Super Bowl expectations once again. I was real nervous. I was real nervous we were going to be doing a show on Monday where it was like, they barely squeaked away with the victory. Not at all. Totally wrong. Glad to be wrong. Lions back in the win column, Kyle. It was great.
Hey, Ben, remember that panic button we were talking about?
Oh, we hit it.
Why don't we walk out to the Tridge and launch it off of that thing? Because it's gone. We don't need that panic button anymore, man. Look, this was, I think, sigh of relief is the best way to put this. The fact that this offense in week 2, after we had questioned their ability all season long, how things are going to look, put up 52 points against Ben Johnson, obviously as the first time returning to Detroit. What a great feeling it was. And I do like your point about we didn't have a tight game yet without the first 2 weeks of the year. And to me, it almost feels like the season hasn't officially started until you get one of those games. I don't know why.
Well, there were so many yesterday in the 1 o'clock slate while the Lions were just when the backups were in.
The stressful game at the end of the game, exactly. I was more tapped into the other games, at the end of the 1 o'clock slate than I was the Lions game at the end, just because of obviously how good they were. But yeah, it was just awesome that we finally got to see this immediately after the week 1 loss to Green Bay.
I mean, Jared Goff had all the time in the world, and he made the most of it. I talked about all those guys that scored touchdowns, got up on their scoreboards, filled up the box score. Jared Goff arguably had one of his best games as a Detroit Lion ever, and he picks up his first win without Ben Johnson here in Detroit as well. He goes 334 yards, 5 tutties, and a QBR of 94.1. He was sensational yesterday, and it just shows, hey, when you give this guy time and he's not under constant pressure and there's not miscommunication on the offensive line, he's going to be able to destroy defenses because he has vision and can process a defense amongst the best quarterbacks in the NFL. He doesn't have the athleticism. We know that, but he makes up for it with his mental makeup of the game. Meanwhile, the other quarterback, Caleb Williams, in this one, shows off his athleticism, shows his escapability, can't read defenses, like makes stupid mistakes time and time again. And because Aiden Hutchinson forced him to make one of those stupid mistakes, Kirby Joseph has his 18th interception of his career.
Oh, man.
The most by a single player since he entered the league in 2021. If he's sitting there, Kirby Joseph, and he sees that ball launched up, he's got to think, there's no way. Like, there's simply no way that I'm going to have another interception this easily, because Caleb just threw it right to his hands.
What a terrible throw. And Caleb actually made a really nice play on that, like before the interception, to avoid the sack. Like, he escaped really well, and I was like, oh, it finally seemed like we were going to get to him for the first time on the day. Because like you said, I think he was pretty good all game avoiding that pressure. But tries to throw the ball away, and it's like, dude, if Kirby Joseph is in the vicinity, like, it will end up in his grasp. It's what he does. And it was awesome to see that. It was awesome to see the defensive line later in the game finally get to Caleb Williams and see that pressure, not be an actual pressure, turn into a real sack. So, love it, man. Just an awesome win.
Yeah, they end up getting 4 sacks on the day. It took a while for the pass defense, the pass rush to get going. And in that first half, I'm sitting there like, oh, man, is this going to be another narrative coming into Monday's show? Like, they can't get home. They end up getting home. Hutchinson gets his first sack of the season. Even Davenport getting in there despite the 2 injuries. Hey, we talked about Kirby Joseph forcing a turnover. How about Brian Dion Branch also forcing a turnover? He comes in. We always talk about Brian Branch as one of the more versatile players in the NFL. 6 tackles yesterday,
Ooh.
2 TFL. You don't know Brian Dion Branch? Brian?
What a shot by Dion Branch.
Right. I'm going to start calling Jonathan Vilma Brian Vilma for the rest of eternity. How do you not know an all-pro safety's name? It's not like this is just some bum who came in off the bench. Like, if this was, okay.
Vilma's a defensive player, man. Like, you would think he would be more attached to Brian Branch.
Nothing against someone like Lawrence Strickland, but, like, if he got Lawrence Strickland's name wrong, no one would be judging him. Brian Branch is one of the best safeties in the NFL, and yesterday was a perfect example of why. He has a sack, 2 TFLs, forces a fumble, and if you watch the replay of that play when Vilma calls him Dion Branch, and he comes down and forces that. He makes a play at the line of scrimmage to force the fumble. He's 15 yards off the line when the ball snaps. He comes flying in like a missile, punches the ball out. His mouth guard pops out of his helmet too. Jack Campbell picks it up, who led the team with 8 tackles. This was an all-around great performance. The very first drive from the Bears, there was a little miscommunication there. Not exactly sure how that happened in the zone coverage. Like, I'm like, oh my God, they're going to get into another shootout again. There's no pressure. Communication on the back end wasn't all that great. They cleaned everything up, and by the time the second half rolled around, it felt like Caleb Williams had essentially thrown in the towel.
Yeah.
Like, screw this, I don't want to be here anymore.
And I think every time that there's a thing that you question with Dan Campbell, you have to look back at the positive things that happened, like at the end of the first half in that game. The management from Detroit at the end of the first half was spectacular.
Well, that was also a mess by the officials.
It truly was, yes.
I still don't fully understand what happened there. Isaac Tisla gets the catch.
Yeah.
They say he's not out of bounds, but he might have been out of bounds, so the officials keep the clock going, and then for some reason there's 6 seconds left and they don't get off the play, but because the officials messed something
they
up.
They had to do a 10-second runoff. Yeah, it was really just...
I didn't get it. I don't know.
And that was the part that sucked about the whole thing, was you couldn't really even celebrate the insane catch from Tesla because everyone was like, what is going on? Like, are we even going to be able to run another play? And I think, shout out to Dan Campbell, I think a lot of teams would kick right there. They would take the 3 with 6 seconds to go, no risks involved. They would take the 3. Dan Campbell goes for the end zone, results in St. Brown's second of 3 touchdowns of the day. It was awesome.
Well, I think Dan Campbell, like most other coaches, also would have just kicked a field goal on 4th down when the game was already over in the waning moments of the 4th quarter. They decide, you know what? No, we're getting anyone with Amon-Ra St. Brown in fantasy football an extra 7 points here because he's going to have a hat trick. He's going to jump into the crowd. Jared Goff's going to follow him into the crowd. Just a feel-good game for the Detroit Lions, regardless of who the opponent was. But the fact that it was Ben Johnson just made it a little bit sweeter. You mentioned the halftime, like the fiasco that happened right before the half. How about Ben Johnson just like, nope, we're going to the locker room. Screw you, dude.
It's almost like if a coach does that, the officials are just going to sway it in the other direction just because that's got to annoy them, right?
Yes, of course. No one told him it was halftime.
Yeah.
He's like, nope, we're going out.
And to
See
come
you
back
guys.
out, funny stuff, man. That was good.
Ben Johnson, man, he's a funny character these days. I want to get people's opinions on whether or not you hate Ben Johnson. I don't think anyone out there still likes him, but I wonder if people like truly hate him, because there was a whole conversation after the game of, did Dan Campbell purposely run up the scoreboard on Ben Johnson? I would make the argument Dan Campbell has ran up the scoreboard on everyone that has crossed paths with him, and he's had the capability of doing it. The Lions take advantage of those teams, and Ben Johnson was no different. No different. Just a person in the way of what the Lions want to accomplish, and that is getting back on top of the NFC North. Obviously, the Packers in first place right now with a 2-0 record. Lions 1-1 with Baltimore on the clock next week. Always a scary game, but you know what? It feels good. They wrote the ship. Everything feels good with the Detroit Lions right now after that butt-kicking of a game against the Bears. No problems to talk about this week. Not a perfect game by any stretch of the imagination, but certainly a good turnaround from what it was last week. 989-837-6125. Want to get into your thoughts on Ben Johnson, whether or not this is Detroit's best rivalry, whether or not it's a rivalry at all, whether or not you actually despise this person, or is this just another coach that the Lions, wanted to embarrass in front of all of their fans inside of Ford Field. 989-837-6125. We've got the YouTube chat going as well. Don't forget about that. You can drop a comment